we have a sweet one today. So, what better way to build a great standard deck than to take the de facto best deck and then add the best card from the new set? So, it is our fourth color. It is Dragonlord Ojutai. And I've had some fun with this deck so far. So, this looks like a pretty normal Abzan deck, and it just has the dragon. But it's actually worked out pretty well. And the biggest issue, I think, with this is the mana base. So, normal Abzan decks have some pretty hefty color requirements, but since they have 24 land, maybe, 27 if they have no caryatids, they're generally able to hit their mark. They're able to play things like Courser, Downfall, Elspeth, and still not really bat an eye at it. But once you add that fourth color, things get a little more dicey. Like most of these lands have two colors mana symbols on them, and you have to take away some of those mana symbols to add the blue mana symbols. So you only have like a certain amount of colored mana sources that you can actually make in a mana base of 26 lands. We have an extra tri-land to help out. Look at that, extra colored mana source. But it is kind of tough. I think I made it work. There's some colors, I think, that have a little less than I would like. But we are playing the 4/4, full 4 Sylvan Caryatids. I tried some Satyr Wayfinders, and those were okay. It let you actually hit a dragon and then get it back with Haven of the Spirit Dragon. So, in a way, given enough time, Satyr Wayfinder could actually find you a big threat. So, that was not that bad, but the problem was that Wayfinder didn't do really anything else on its own. So, those eventually got the axe, and I feel like the mana base is okay as is. So, you might notice that past this Elspeth, there's nothing. There are no Ugins here. We're mostly playing a smaller ball game than the typical Abzan control decks as of late, which is evident by the fact that we're playing Sylvan Caryatid. So, basically just trying to ramp into a Dragonlord, kill their stuff in the meantime, make them discard probably their answers to this thing, and just maybe connect with this, and then hopefully it's all over. Hopefully you just start drawing a bunch of cards, and then it's no big deal anymore. But sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes you have to Thoughtseize their threats and whatnot, and then you just kind of sit around with this Dragonlord Ojutai enchantment in play that doesn't really attack. But that's okay too. It plays right into your game plan. Eventually they'll have to kill your rhinos and whatnot, and then, you can just hit them with the dragon. So, Elspeth is basically our top end, which is, kind of similar to the older Abzan decks. There's no Ugin. I don't think there's really any need. We're playing a smaller game, and Ojutai is not really conducive to playing a super long Ugin game plan, because once you connect with it, they're basically dead. So I'm more interested in just trying to play that game than rather, playing these 8-drop planeswalkers and whatnot. So the removal suite has always been pretty interesting in Abzan. There are a lot of different decks out there. They're coming at you from all different types of angles. There's things with these hexproof dragons, or the red decks that are going wide with a bunch of little goblin tokens. There's some planeswalkers out there. There are things like Whip of Erebos. There's a lot of different stuff that you really want to kill. And I think I did the best that I could here, given that no one removal spell kills everything. There is Hero's Downfall, but that doesn't kill 3 goblins. It just doesn't. So, we need things like Bile-Blight. We need things like Foul Tongue Invocation to kill Dragonlord Ojutai, and also, gain some life against some red decks, which is also pretty nice. Abzan Charm is our removal spell that exiles Deathmist Raptor. It also functions as a Sign in Blood against control decks that otherwise would have very few targets for this thing. So, I think I did pretty good on the removal suite here. I would like maybe an extra 2-drop, but I tried Ultimate Price, and it just doesn't kill very many things in the format right now. At least not very many things that are actually really important. So that thing had to go. Instead, I have a Valor Stance, which is good against big stuff and also protects my Ojutai for when I try and attack with it. So that's nice. We have the Ambitious Tasigur over here in the 1 mana slot. So basically, I think that this deck could play 1 or 2 Delve cards. When I had the 2 Wayfinders, I could probably play 2, but I just have the 1 right now, and it could be a Murderous Cut or a Tasigur. I wanted all these different removal spells. Murderous Cut, something that just kills a creature, it didn't have enough utility for me to want to play it, so instead I just have this extra threat, which I think is fine. But that's about it for the main deck. I guess I could talk about Thoughtseize here. So recently in these green-black decks, I've been playing 3 Thoughtseize, 1 Duress, and that's just because Duress is often a better card against the mono-red decks. You get to take a Whirling Outburst or a Stoke the Flames with no loss of life, which is pretty nice. But there are also decks out there where Duress is kind of a brick. So you play against something like Abzan Aggro, maybe they kept a hand with 3 creatures and 4 lands, and you just break on your Duress. And you can't really afford to do that because your cards are mostly trading 1 for 1, plus you have 30 mana sources. So you need to be able to stay on top of them, and if you brick on a discard spell, or just like brick on anything, if you have any sort of dead card, it is really, really bad for you. So highly recommend against the Duress in this deck, at least. I feel like there are some things like the various whip decks or whatever, they're not too interested in trading 1 for 1. You know, it's just mostly about building to a bigger late game, which this deck really isn't about. So I like 4 Thoughtseize in this deck. As for the sideboard, I'm going to scroll over here and make this huge. My plan against control with decks like these green-black decks, is to go up to more discard spells, have some card drawing so you can stay on top of them, and then have some pretty good threats. So like right now, we have a bunch of good threats main deck. But you really want something to actually stay on top of them. And by that, I mean, a lot of the time, between your hand and your board, you have enough to cover what's in their hand. And then maybe you're up a thing on top of that still. So like maybe you have an extra threat waiting. And a lot of that is because you get to play these discard spells, take their card drawing, or take the thing that you can't deal with, and then you have the information for what they can deal with. So you might see their hand, it has 3 Heroes Downfalls, you have a Rhino in play, and 3 in your hand. So it's like, alright, eventually you're going to have this extra Rhino that maybe they can't deal with, which is good. That's basically the spot that you want the game to get in. The issue is that they can just top deck a Dig Through Time, and now instead of being behind a card, they're up a card. And it is really tough to actually come out on top of that exchange, because say at the end of it you're a parity and they have an extra counterspell. That means that not only do you have to top deck into another threat, but then that just trades with their counterspell, and then you have to get another threat before they find another answer. So having things like Read the Bones is really important at allowing you to stay on top of them. Something like Den Protector might also be good, and that could be a card I could have in this deck too. Maybe I should actually have one, I don't know. But yeah, things like Read the Bones are great. Consider Treasure Cruise only have 7 real blue sources, and typically side out Caryatid against them. So not quite good enough, I think. I think I'd rather just have Read the Bones. And then the other thing that helps is the Risen Executioner. So I wrote an article on Esper Dragons last week, and a lot of people in the comments were like, "Hey man, why aren't you playing this big fat blobby guy?" And I was like, well, it seems like it'd be a card that's really good in game 1, but post-board they board in all these prerogatives, and then I think they could just stay on top of it with card drawing. And I've played several games like that, where they just like downfall this thing every other turn, and it's not really a big deal. But it is one of those cards where if you play it on turn 4, they're in a lot of trouble, and they're going to have to eventually use cards on it that, you know, you just end up getting back because you get to recast this guy. So between Read the Bones and Risen Executioner, you have enough things to actually stay on top of them, which I really like. Also have Self-Inflicted Wound as a 3rd edict against their Ojutais, and a Valor Stance that can also kill Ojutai, but also protect your creature. And then Self-Inflicted Wound and these Bile Blights are good against Abzan Aggro. Same with the Glare of Heresy. Valor Stance is also reasonable against them. And then against Mono Red, we have some Drown in Sorrows to go with the Bile Blights. And Drown has actually not been very good against them, for me, because they have dash creatures, and they try and play around it as best they can. They know that every black deck is going to board in some amount of sweepers, so a lot of my opponents will have a Foundry Street Denizen, and then they'll like play a dash guy and just like hit me for 4, or they'll wait until they can play Hordling Outburst and hit me for 4 with the Denizen. So I either have to kill the Denizen then, or take 4 damage to get my 2 for 1. And I found that in a lot of those spots, I really just want to kill the Denizen to not take the 4 damage, because that's more important than actually trying to grind them out with card advantage. But I do think that there are some spots where they're just like, all right, I can't win if he has a Drown in Sorrow, so I just have to like pile everything into play. And then at that point, you basically need something to keep them honest, you know? So Drown has been pretty good. I generally like Virulent Plague more, but Elspeth is a pretty big part of my sideboard plan against them. Just having this thing in the late game that actually locks it up. So Virulent Plague, not so good there when it shuts down your best card. And then I wanted an extra card for Mono Red, so I have a Feed the Clan, which might not be right, but we do have 8 ways to turn it on. But like just gain 5 life is often generally pretty good anyway. So you have some Duresses and Feed the Clans to actually trade with their burn spells basically, and it's really tough for them to kill you with their creatures, like just their creatures. So burning you out is a pretty big part of that. So I have a Feed the Clan, but It's not great because I would like it to be something that is good in other matchups, and it is very much just a mono red card. But that is it. That's it. That's how I built my sideboard, and I don't know. I feel like the sideboard is a little on the weaker end. There are no real haymakers or anything. It just makes my deck a little bit better, but I think that's also okay because we have a lot of the powerhouse cards main deck, so I don't really need to board in like, you know, Liliana Vess or something, just like some other 5-drop haymaker type of card, because I already have a bunch of stuff like that. So I think it's okay if you, like, post board, you just lower your curve, make your matchup a little bit better, and just go from there. So I've played this deck a little bit already, and I've been, you know, kind of tweaking and tuning where I can and stuff, but it's not quite there, I don't think. I think the mana could be a little bit better, but I've had a lot of fun with it, and it's actually shown a lot of promise, too. So hope you guys enjoy it.